Hello. Let's see how this works. I'm going to try to run the live off of the Facebook group and Instagram at the same time. So if you have both platforms, you might get a different view. I warned a couple people, so hopefully some people come on. This is one of my favorite recipes to make. Hello. Hey, Anika. Okay, so those that are joining on Instagram, hey Deb, and Facebook, I actually have both my Instagram and my Facebook up, and I'm doing live on both of them. So whatever platform you prefer to watch. I know I have the Dish the Diets on my Facebook group is specifically for that, and then Instagram is kind of open to a bunch of people. Hey, Christy, thanks for joining, guys. So if you have both, you can watch the Instagram, and the Instagram, I'll try to show more of the actual bowl. And if you guys have any questions throughout the process, even if it's about nutrition or diet, hey guys, how are ya? Let me know. I'm going to be going back and forth between Facebook and the Instagram. But what I'm going to do today is just share with you one of my favorite meal prep once the pumpkin season comes around. So I call them my pumpkin oat bars, and you can make them into muffins, so it's a lot easier. I just actually have learned I prefer to make them in this giant square pan, something that is really easy for me to cut up. I can throw it in the freezer and then pull them out in the morning and take it on my way out the door. So super love that. Hi everybody, welcome. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the kind of all the liquids together first. And I actually am following a recipe this time. I normally don't follow a recipe because I put together this book when I was in college. And super crazy, I just kept track of all my recipes, and I don't super love the pictures. That's why I haven't shared them with you guys. But yeah, there's that. So, hey, Tam, what's up? On the Facebook, if you guys want to comment, do you want to see it this view, or do you want to kind of see the actual kitchen stuff? So comment really fast. I always feel weird when you can't see my face. And then on the Instagram one, I think you can see both. We'll move it down this way. So let me know. It's kind of weird with this little ghost stick thing. So yeah, let me know on Facebook and all that good stuff. And then Instagram, let me know if you guys have any questions too. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the ripe bananas here. So this recipe only calls for half of a cup of a ripe banana. So I'm just gonna pull this off. I always buy a ton of extra bananas at Costco because I use bananas all the time in baked goods. You like seeing the kitchen stuff. Okay, thanks, Kens. So I'm just gonna basically kind of mush it up a little bit. And then I'm gonna get just a little more banana because that wasn't quite half of the banana. So let me pull this back so you can see that a little bit better. Yeah, Costco is the best place to buy bananas. They're always super cheap, and I'll buy a huge bag of them and keep them in the freezer. And then I can pull them out for whenever I'm doing baked goods. So that banana helps to replace a lot of the added sugars in baked goods, and then you can replace the oils if you want to as well. So this is gonna be pumpkin. So I'm gonna use canned pumpkin here, and it's gonna call for 1 cup of pumpkin. So I'm gonna measure this stuff out. I normally don't measure, but with pumpkin, it can get really kind of mushy. So I wanna make sure I don't use too much of it because it really changes the consistency and the texture of it. So this is a half a cup, and then I'm gonna do another half of a cup to make a whole cup of pumpkin. And then what I'm gonna do with my leftover pumpkin puree is actually freeze it, because you can then use it later in different recipes. So you never hardly ever use the whole can of pumpkin. So I'm just gonna put this over to the side, and I'm gonna put it in a Tupperware just like this and put it in my freezer for another recipe later on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mash up the banana and the pumpkin just to make sure that it's all nice and blended. I don't like the chunks of banana, but some people do like the chunks of banana, so it's kind of up to your discretion here. Again, that banana is really just the one that's replacing the oils, replacing a little bit of the added sugar and all that stuff. So with that, it's all nice and blended. One thing that's really interesting is a lot of these pumpkin flavored stuff is really just has to do with the seasonings that you use. So we're gonna add a lot of really fresh seasonings in here. Okay, once we're at that point, we wanna add the rest of the liquids. So we're gonna add 1 whole egg. You can do 2 egg whites if you're really trying to watch the saturated fat content. But I like to add 1 egg and then 1 egg white to balance it out a little bit. The egg yolk really helps to kind of keep it all together, and it doesn't get quite as mushy. So I'm just using this liquid egg whites, and it's 3 tablespoons of liquid egg whites for 1 egg. So that's a conversion that some people don't know, so that's always nice and handy to have. And then I'm going to also add in applesauce. Applesauce, again, helps to sweeten it without all the added sugars. I use these little individual packets, so I'm not having to waste an entire can of applesauce. And this is going to call for 1/3 cup of unsweetened applesauce. So 1/3 cup of unsweetened applesauce. Applesauce can be one of those things that is tricky, and it can have hidden sugars in it or hidden added sugars. So you want to make sure that you're reading the food label on that right now, because our current food label is not going to tell us if it's added or if it's naturally occurring. So after I'm done adding, sorry, just trying to clean up a little bit as I go, you can add in the milk. So you can use whatever milk choice. I have almond milk here. You can use soy milk. Hello, welcome. Whichever one you prefer is really up to your own. If you want to boost the protein content, you can use regular cow's milk. I just don't drink a ton of cow's milk, so I'm not going to buy it just for a recipe. So I'm going to do 2/3 cup of whatever milk you're choosing. So almond milk, soy milk, cow's milk, whatever you prefer. It's your choice. It doesn't really matter which one you use there. So after that, I'm going to use vanilla extract. I get mine, let's see, in Mexico because it's really pure delicious. And it's about a tablespoon. I'm not eyeballing this because I've done it enough. I know what that looks like. So 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract is your next liquid there. So that finishes all of our liquids. So I'm going to now mix it with my whisk. And you can put this in a KitchenAid if you want to. I just didn't want the sound of the motor with the video here. So again, just going to kind of mix all that up. And this is the only big mixing bowl that I have. So yes, it is a trifle bowl. You can make really delicious trifle with pumpkin cake though. Highly recommend that. I use that for Thanksgiving recipes more than pumpkin pie because I don't like the texture of pumpkin pie. So that's something that is really good. All right, now that is all mixed. So I'm gonna actually set this aside because we're gonna mix in the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients. So here, I'm going to start with the sugar. I am adding a little bit of sugar. Hello, welcome on Instagram, everyone. And it is only 1/3 cup of added sugar here. So 1/3 cup of brown sugar I'm going to put in the bowl. I don't pack it in there, just nice and light. So I do want a little bit of that added sugar because it will help with the texture. If you don't put any added sugar in it, it doesn't taste as good as a normal kind of baked good. And this is something that I experimented with for years because I really like to bake and make those healthy swaps. So this recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour. So you can use whatever flour you want. If you want to use whole wheat, which I'll try to use whole wheat just to boost that fiber content, you can use all-purpose flour. I typically use actually Kodiak cakes. So the Kodiak cakes, I'll use 1.5 cups of that, but I'm out of that right now. So I have kind of another substitute. This Birch Benders is really good. So I'm going to use 1.5 cups of this in my oat bars today, but I typically will use the Kodiak cakes. So I'm just going to put in that dried ingredient in a separate bowl because I don't want to over mix it because it will become really, really tough. And then we also have oatmeal in this recipe, but I'm going to save that because I want to get blended the baking powders and baking sodas and all that stuff. So with our baking soda and baking powder, it's important that you can actually blend it in really well because if not, you can get like this metallic-y flavor to it. So really important, that's why we separate it out because if not, it gets into the wet ingredients and it can clump up. So with this, I do measure it because I definitely don't want to overdo it. So we're going to use, let me look at this, I forgot, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And the baking soda and baking powder is what gives it that rise and makes it nice and fluffy. So baking powder, it's 1.5 teaspoons. So I'm going to do 3 of these because I'm using 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And then we're gonna add in a little bit of salt. So we're gonna add in 1/4 cup of salt, and I'm just pouring that over my sink so I don't get too much extra. Salt will bring out that flavor. Now comes all the good stuff. We're gonna put in all the seasonings. So my favorite is to use a blend of 4. You can use pumpkin pie seasoning to make this a little bit easier, but I don't like pumpkin pie seasoning. I like to make my own. So what I do is use cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and clove. And you really have to be careful with the clove because the clove can really overpower it. So I'm going to use cinnamon first, and I really love cinnamon, so we use a whole teaspoon, not tablespoon, that would be too much. So 1 teaspoon of cinnamon is going to go in, and then same thing with the nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg as well. I buy my nutmeg at Trader Joe's, by the way, because I honestly think that their prices are the best. So I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. It's $1.99 for nutmeg, which nutmeg other places can literally cost you $3 or $4. So that's really cool. And then ginger, we're going to use 1/4 teaspoon. So 1/4 of ground ginger. And then my clove is 1/8 teaspoon. Again, you can totally use pumpkin pie spice because that is basically the same thing, but I like this blend better. It's always worked well. So now I'm going to blend this before I actually add the oats in, because if not, it gets too clumpy. So I'm just going to rinse this off because it had that wet ingredient on it. So just nice and blend all of this up, the dried ingredients, because it's going to be able to incorporate that baking soda and baking powder a little bit better. And then it also has the brown sugar in here too, so that can be a little bit clumpy. We're just going to blend that up. Again, you can use whatever flours you want to. I actually have not used like a gluten-free all-purpose flour, but that may work. I don't need to eat gluten-free, so I don't typically do it. They tend to be a little bit higher in added sugars and a little lower in protein and whole grains. So I just choose not to do it because I don't need to eat that way. But if people have celiac disease or something along those lines and they need gluten-free, then that's something, of course, of their choice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start mixing the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. So I'm just going to incorporate it a little bit at a time. So I'm going to put about half of this in here and start to mix it up. Again, we don't want to over mix it here. And this smells so good. I wish you guys could smell it. It smells like the grocery store, you know, when you go in and they have all the cinnamon sticks right now. It smells excellent. And then I'm going to mix in that other half, and then we'll add the oats at the very end. So I know for me, this has been a really good breakfast to add with even just a couple of eggs or something in the morning, because it doesn't have a ton of protein, especially if you're not using the Kodiak cakes or this other pancake blend that I have. Do you preheat oven? I do. So I actually don't have my oven on right now just because I'm standing right next to it, and it's 80 degrees in San Diego right now. I don't have air conditioning in my apartment, so it would be too hot. But I would typically start my oven before on 350 degrees. So that's where you want it at. Okay, for oats, it's going to be 1 cup of oats. And with oats, what I've noticed is you want to use the quick oats. So like the 1-minute quick oats, because if you use the old-fashioned oats, it's a really thick consistency, and I don't particularly love that. So I added 1 cup of quick oats in here, and oats are so good. They're full of fiber, and that will be able to stabilize blood sugars. It will keep you full. Move that can from the top of the stove if the oven's on. It's not on, Deb. We're good. Like I said, it's too hot to have the oven on right now, but I will move it when I'm done. Oh, and then the best part is we're going to add a little bit of chocolate chips. So let me grab them out of my fridge. So the last piece here is going to just be 1/3 cup of chocolate chips. This could be optional. You absolutely don't have to. I really like that little bit of sweetness that it adds into the baked good though. So I always add the chocolate chips, and it's really not that much. You can use dark chocolate if you want to get more of those health benefits. And then all I'm going to do is basically spray this pan with nonstick spray. I'm going to pour my batter into it, put it in the oven on 350 degrees, and then I'm going to bake it for about 45 minutes. So that is all you have to do to make these pumpkin oat bars. You can make them into muffins. If you make them into muffins, it's still 350 degrees, and then you're gonna bake it for about 20 to 25 minutes, depending on your oven. Stick a fork in it before you pull it out, and if the fork comes out clean, doesn't have any batter on it, that means they're good to go. And then I store these in the freezer because they don't have a lot of that extra added sugar. They don't stay, they go bad really quickly if you leave them out on the counter. So I always throw them in the freezer, and then when I want them in the morning, I just pop it in the microwave for about 35 seconds or so, and then it's really nice and warm. It's cooked all the way through. So this is a great way to kind of start your day off, and then you can meal prep it for the entire week. So thanks for joining me. Let me know if you guys actually make these. I know I was talking through all the recipe ingredients and the numbers, so I'll actually post a picture of this recipe for you so you can have it. The instructions are really simple though. It's basically like blend all the wet ingredients, blend all the dry ingredients, and then mix them, because it's my own cookbook that I follow, so I know my shorthand. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. This was my last piece to meal prep, and I'm gonna probably eat some tonight, and then I'll have some for breakfast tomorrow. Have a good day. Thanks for joining.